Picture your feet on a forest floor. Feel the crunch of dry pine needles under your boot, the snap of a dead twig. Every scrap of dead stuff lying there, accumulated season after season. It's fuel. That's normal. Forests are supposed to be full of dead vegetation. And for most of history, that fuel burned. Small fires, low to the ground. Every 5 to 10 years, sometimes more often, they'd creep through the understory, clear the brush, thin the saplings, and release seeds from cones that need heat to open. The big trees survived because their bark was thick enough and their crowns high enough. The ecosystem was built for fire. Then we stopped it. Not because someone planned it that way, something else happened first. August 1910, the American West is deep in a drought year that keeps getting worse. Lightning storms roll through the northern Rockies. Fires start, dozens, then hundreds. Nobody's worried yet. It's a big country. Fires happen. Then the wind hits. 70 miles an hour. The separate fires merge into one, a wall of flame 3 miles wide, moving faster than a horse can run. It doesn't burn through the forest, it runs across the treetops. It creates its own weather, tornado-like plumes that suck air in and feed the fire from above. The smoke reaches New England. People in New York think the world is ending. 2 days, 3 million acres from Idaho to Washington to Montana, whole towns gone. 87 people dead. The U.S. Forest Service is 5 years old. They have maybe a few hundred trained firefighters in the entire country. They throw 4,000 soldiers and every man they can find at the fire. It doesn't matter. The fire doesn't stop until it runs out of fuel. It was a once-in-a-thousand-year event, a perfect storm of extreme drought, endless lightning, and unprecedented wind, but it became the reason for everything that followed. The men running the Forest Service in those early years had watched the Big Blowup. They'd watched 78 firefighters die in a single afternoon. The agency's 3 future chiefs were all there on the fire line. They carried that trauma into every decision. They brought a military mindset: build roads, erect watchtowers, and kill every fire by 10 o'clock the next morning. 1935, that becomes official policy, the 10 a.m. rule. Fire is the enemy. They build a nationwide network of lookout towers across the West. They trained the first smoke jumpers in 1941 parachuting into remote terrain to catch fires before they grow. They drop retardant from planes. They set up aerial surveillance. Every flame is treated like an invasion, and the symbol of the campaign is a real bear. In May 1950, a black bear cub was caught in the Capitan Gap fire in New Mexico. Firefighters found him clinging to a charred tree, badly burned on his paws and hind legs. They rescued him, named him Smokey, and he became the living face of fire prevention. He got his own zip code. At his peak, he received more mail than the White House. The system worked. Year after year, firefighters caught 98% of all wildfires before they spread beyond a few acres. Meanwhile, in Arizona, centuries-old cross-sections of ponderosa pine show fire scars every few rings from low-intensity burns, regularly, predictably, for hundreds of years. Then around 1900, nothing. The scars stopped, the fires stopped, but the fuel kept growing. That 98% success rate, it's not saving us from fire. It's selecting for the worst possible fire. Every low-intensity blaze we put out is a fire that would have cleared the understory, would have killed the weak saplings, would have returned nutrients to the soil. Instead, that fuel stays on the ground. Season after season, it dries, it compounds. Researchers call this suppression bias. Suppression mainly eliminates low and moderate intensity fires. The only fires that survive are the extreme ones, the ones that hit under the worst possible conditions with a century of fuel waiting for them. The math is brutal. If you remove 98% of fires, the 2% that remain aren't random. They're the ones that happen in drought years. High wind, low humidity, and those fires encounter fuel that's been accumulating for decades because the small fires never got to clear it. We didn't just stop fires, we warped which kind of fire can exist. It's not a fire anymore, it's a bomb. The bias does more measurable damage than a century of fuel buildup or climate change alone. A side-by-side comparison of 2 landscapes. Left side shows a healthy forest with small flames, labeled natural. Right side shows the same forest overgrown with thick debris, labeled suppression. The bias does more damage than a century of fuel buildup or climate change. Over a human lifespan, suppression has changed the landscape. The Weeks Act of 1911 gave the Forest Service authority over fire and banned indigenous cultural burning. For thousands of years, the Karuk tribe in California had burned the landscape deliberately. Not random fires, but precise ones. They burned in the fall after the first rain, at locations that acted as fuel breaks. They burned for hazel shoots for baskets, acorn areas under oaks, and edge habitat for deer. The result was a mosaic of young growth, old growth, open areas, and dense forest. That mosaic stopped large fires from spreading. When it stopped, the vegetation grew and grew, less burning. More vegetation. That's the whole thing. Fast forward to 1988. Yellowstone has been fire suppressed for nearly a century. A 1972 program to let natural fires burn was never implemented. They kept stopping fires. That summer, drought hit hard. Lightning started fires across the park. The fuel that should have burned over a century decided to burn all at once. 1.2 million acres, over a third of Yellowstone, 9,000 firefighters, $120 million. The word they used, megafire. The wildfire season is now 78 days longer than 1970. In some areas, nearly year-round. We're burning twice as many acres as 30 years ago. The Forest Service spends more than half its budget fighting fires, up from 16% in 1995. Less for reforestation, trails, watershed protection, and fire prevention. It's a spiral. Suppression eats the prevention budget, more fires escape. Suppression needs more money. The 2% of fires that escape consume 30% of the budget, a near-perfect track record that still loses. Meanwhile, cheatgrass is rewriting entire ecosystems across the Great Basin. It dries out earlier, burns easily, and grows back faster than native plants. The cheatgrass fire cycle is a feedback loop. Each fire resets the landscape in its favor. Cheatgrass moves in, creates a fine fuel layer, burns, and recolonizes faster than anything native. Within a few fire cycles, the landscape becomes a near monoculture. No sagebrush, no native forage. The whole ecosystem flips. The fire doesn't just burn the land, it changes what the land is. Stephen Pine calls our era the Pyrocene, an age defined by fire, too much bad fire and not enough good fire. Removing fire from landscapes that evolved with it caused a disruption on the scale of an ice age. Picture a dry pine needle in your hand. 100 years ago, it would have burned in a low fire that crept through and kept going. Nothing dramatic, just the forest doing what forests do. Today, it sits on the ground with 100 years of company, waiting for one spark.